Hello and welcome to your Asian Pulse TV. This is your informative and resourceful station, and I'm your host Manbir Randhawa. Today we are broadcasting from the unceded territories of Silvertooth Nation, Mokim, Kwantlen Nation. We feel very blessed for the generosity of the First Nation who let us share this land with them. March 23rd is National Puppy Day. Dog enthusiasts celebrate unconditional love and fawn over the undeniable cute fur balls that bring so much happiness into our world. The day is also marked and designed to raise awareness about puppy mills and guide prospective pet owners to consider adoption. Vancouver Cherry Blossom Festival will be taking place from April 1st to April 23rd, but the photographs of beautiful cherry blossoms have already gone viral. The city of Vancouver holds a series of outdoor events and based around the local theme, food, there are lots of events at Vancouver City Parks. 2023 theme is Cultivating the Blossoms of Our Culture. Long awaited Vaisakhi parade is finally happening in person after 2 years of gap due to COVID 19. The date is set to April 22nd, 2023, Saturday, and applications are open on the website to book your stall. Let's take a short break and hear some words from our sponsors.
I understand how important it is to have a place called home, and it's frustrating using your hard-earned money on rent. Vic Prasad can make you a homeowner. Get pre-approved services provided to first-time buyers and new immigrants. You can qualify for mortgage even if you have bad credit. Call Vic Prasad now on 604-306-6647. Vic Prasad is associated with Craft Mortgages Canada Incorporated.
For any kind of visa-related services, contact Milky Way Immigration, a galaxy of opportunities located at Unit 209-9547 152 Street, Surrey, BC. They have licensed immigration consultants, placement officers, and LMIA experts to meet your immigration and recruitment needs. Book one-time free consultation either on Facebook or by calling 604-396-0005. Bollywood Banquet Hall and Conference Center, located at Pile Business Center at 201-8166 128th Street in Surrey. No celebration is too small to accommodate you. They have newly renovated 2 halls to serve you, up to 1,000 guest capacity, top-notch chefs to delight you with delectable and heavenly cuisine. So just call Bollywood Banquet Hall at 604-598-2700 for your events. Benisi Mobile Detailing Services. They offer commercial trucks, cars, SUV, boats, bikes, RVs, and much more. Just give them a call at 778-808-2859. Just give them a call at 778-808-2859 and they will do all kind of services at your home. Thank you, sponsors. Our guest today is Robin McQueen, Director of Clinical Counseling.
Hi, you're watching Asian Pulse with your host Meena J, and in the studio with me is Robin McKelvin, a registered clinical counselor. Welcome, Robin, and a clinical director.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you went into counseling, how you became the clinical director and your own counseling practice.
So it's a long story, but I think like most people get into counseling to understand themselves better and understand their families better. There's been a lot of mental health in my family, and I kind of was trying to work through it. So I got into counseling, and then I got into working for the health authorities and working kind of in more multidisciplinary teams. Mm-hmm. And then I expanded my own private practice, and I specialize in working with people with neurodiversities, autism and ADHD specifically, that as nowadays there's much more people being diagnosed with it, mm-hmm. And kind of helping understand how to move through the world with seeing it through a lens that's unique to them.
Mm-hmm. And so when we're talking about the developmental disabilities, like you said, autism and ADHD or Down syndrome, is that plus with a mental health lens?
Yeah, so I think for the research right now, if you have a diagnosis of autism or ADHD or any of those or genetic disorders, is that it's very, very common to have another mental health diagnosis on top of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know exact percentages right now, but like you're more likely to have major anxiety, depression, and mood disorders are much more common. So, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how long have you been working in this field, like not just developmental disabilities, but counseling, mental health in general?
So I've been doing this about 23 years now. So I started in my undergrad. I started working as a behavior interventionist with children with autism. I did that for many years, and then I became a behavior consultant for many years, and then I finished my master's specializing in counseling with this population, and I work with neurotypical people too, but families, especially in children, in 2011. So I guess 12 years I've been focusing on the counseling part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so 23 years is a long time. What do you find, like, say, even a decade ago, were most issues people were facing or that were coming to surface versus kind of now?
Social media. I think social media has been a blessing in a lot of ways, but it's also been a very detrimental to mental health in a lot of ways too. So COVID happened. We're going to see the effects of COVID for many, many years on populations due to the fact that people lost activities, lost going to school. Children never even made it to see kids in classrooms or allowed to play with kids, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing the ripple effect of that, and that's going to happen for, I think, decades of what happened with COVID. But everybody, the way they were able to connect was to go on social media.
Yeah.
So I see that a lot now with the fact that social media, because it hit such a huge audience, people have gotten very focused on their value coming from that. So how many likes they're getting, how many followers they have. And they're seeing that as kind of like what makes them a better person, what makes them who they are. But in reality, it is quite superficial. And at the end of the day, are these really your friends? Are you hanging out with them? So the good thing about it is that you're able to connect with people, especially when you're limited. But the bad thing is people are spending much more time on there for hours and hours and hours, and they're actually kind of isolating. Even though the world's opened up a little bit, they're starting to isolate more because they're spending more time on there.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, like TikTok.
Yes, all of these apps, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. I think like social media was before COVID too.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've just realized since you've just said it, because of COVID, that was the outlet,
Mm-hmm.
that was the connection to people. And so the emphasis on that obviously increased. And I didn't actually realize it until you just said it, because social media has been around for a while and like people were, fascinated with this social media and how we have to portray ourselves to everybody else, and the picture people paint. And then I guess with COVID, when you couldn't and you're more isolated, and the way you communicated with people or you connected with people was through social media. And, like you doing counseling, human behavior, what is it that drives people like for these acceptance, I guess it is, right? With people?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to, and it seems kind of basic when you think about mental health, but I think almost all the world's problems come from feeling lonely. And I think that people don't feel heard or understood by perhaps their partners or their families, and it comes down to no matter who's around, like they don't feel completely understood. So I think that loneliness drives a lot of people searching for this, and then they're looking for this validation, external validation, which, as you know, kind of gives you that dopamine hit when you first go on there and get those likes, but it's not lasting very long.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a disconnect because people don't understand. It also helps when people are like, oh, that person's life looks wonderful, they look beautiful, like their family's perfect. How many takes it took to get that perfect photo? And is that just, you're always going to put your best self forward on those things versus what's really happening behind. I work a lot with teenagers, and the bullying on social media is tremendous. And like back in the day when I went to high school, if I wanted to say something gossipy about a friend, we passed a note.
Mm-hmm.
It would take weeks to get to the to the classroom, and now within one hit, you can blast 1,000 people and potentially kind of destroy someone's image and their character, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. Even so with teenagers, right? Like a different generation. It feels, even though you feel like these apps and you're part of these apps, you're connected, but there's such a generational gap. What do you find, especially teenagers? What are they coming with? Is it depression, anxiety, and like how we see what was our norm back in the day to what the norm now is of what you should have. For example, like just look wise, having your nails in is like a normal thing. It's not like a treat, right? It's like a normal part of your kind of appearance nowadays.
Well, and your eyelashes done
eyelashes.
and your makeup done. We've gotten much more focused on image, like than it used to be. Much more. I mean, it always was. Like, it's always been like, people want to look as beautiful as possible, and that's kind of the ideal. But it's become much more focused on what you look like on the outside, which is a little scary because the inside, your looks, you get older. I'm getting older. You change your looks over the years, So what's important to you? Does it stay with you? So teenagers will still come with the same problems. I think they're magnified though by what's happening because they're using a lot more social media and they're really, really comparing themselves much more than they used to. But I would say anxiety and depression are the most common, again, based on feeling lonely and not feeling like they have friends that are actual friends or friends that might say hi to them but don't actually try to connect with them and ask them things. Or a lot of kids will say, I go out, and you'll see it at a restaurant, I go out with my friends and they're all on their phones.
Yeah.
And now people,
Even adults though, yeah.
Well, I've seen people that they're at dinner together and they're texting each other.
Yeah. From one end to the other.
Yeah. And just like, whoa.
Yeah.
And that's a huge change. And I think what happened is I think everybody has a certain level of anxiety. I know I'm in the anxiety realm. And then when COVID hit, basically we were pushed into this very anxious state and we were told, don't go out, don't do this, you're going to kill somebody, people are going to die. So it's just people that were already there, it's tipped them over to the point where they're on the extreme ends now. Because now they're terrified, like, I don't want to kill my mother. I don't want to get anybody sick. I've been told to wash my hands. So a lot of people that have, for example, kind of more obsessive compulsive behaviors, a lot of them got much more intense, especially if they've ritualized cleaning behaviors because of this fear that came, which is probably one of the biggest things that came out of COVID when it was first announced. I thought, they're talking about the physical stuff, but I was like, the mental health stuff's going to go down really fast. Yeah. And I don't think we really planned that well enough.
Yeah, and so, like you said, COVID hit and it was all this, what you can't do, and coming out of COVID, and you see like, oh yeah, now restrictions are being taken off and people can go back to, it's like people are just eager to go back to the way things were, but people aren't going to be the same people that were pre-COVID going back to these things. And I guess when we're talking about it, I'm realizing a lot of this stuff too, because it's like, oh yeah, everybody's just so anxious and just wants everything to go back to normal, but it's going to be a different normal. And you talked about some of the effects of the COVID and now how it impacted mental health and how we would see the effects for decades. What are some of those effects that you've seen?
Socialization skills, really, people that were extroverted sometimes became more. I became more introverted because I'm single and I wasn't living with somebody. I have a son, but other than that, and so I started to lose some of my skills. I used to want to always go out with people, and then I got used to it, and I was like, oh, I don't need to go out and see people as much.
Yeah.
But I see that with a lot of people, especially children, and I feel this is a population I feel really terrible for. Children were either doing school online or were going into a classroom, like my son, and they were separated, told not to touch each other, not allowed to play, and they spent probably a good portion of the day talking about hand hygiene. And that's like, children need to play, that's how they learn, and that's how they express themselves, and they are basically, and now they're scared. So these poor little kids are being told, and not that they shouldn't have, but they were being told all these things, and so they're scared, and they're raised, so they weren't socialized and able to do a lot of things. So not a lot of people don't have the skills, like the play skills that you learn to kind of develop older, in your older ages, right? To socialize yourself. So I see that as a big part. And then people also lost healthy hobbies they had, because like gyms closed, like gyms just went bankrupt, right? So all these hobbies that people had that were really good and good for them physically and mentally, a lot of the places shut down. And then when they started to open back up, it was different, right?
And what about for children? Like, say if your parents or you have children around, how do you encourage them to get back or be more social, and make connections?
The children or the parents?
Children.
Yeah. I mean, it's harder because the parents kind of have to lead that
Yeah,
a little bit, right? Yeah, but starting to bring your kids out to activities and I think it's big for kids, especially the kids that were during COVID. I think that you should be ideally it would be really good to put them in like karate or something where they're around other children again because I think they've lost a big part of their skills at that point. So, swimming, anything where they're kind of around other people and just kind of getting used to that. And it might be slow, like building upon it again too, but yeah.
Um, you know, counseling and therapy is a good thing, and sometimes people, we all know, like in Canada and elsewhere, the stats aren't really the stats because the stats are based on what people report. You know, for mental health, if they've suffered with mental health or come in contact, it's what they report. But there's a lot of people that don't report, that don't seek help. Like the stigma around just mental health and not being that perfect image that you want to show everybody. So how can you help somebody get help?
Well,
If I can
that's always
assist,
kind
I
of the
know.
question of the world. One thing that's changed, I think that with COVID and stuff, people really started to recognize mental health a bit more. And there's a lot more people going to therapy. I've seen a huge increase of people coming into therapy, children, adults. So do they tell people? Still, there is that stigma, and I think a lot of people do keep it private. But I'm seeing, especially with adolescents, that it's kind of become cool to go talk to somebody.
Oh wow.
And a lot of them are now kind of starting to come in and say things. But I think that's pretty amazing too, that the younger people are starting to recognize things earlier than we used to, right? Like it wasn't as a lot of adolescent stuff kind of came when things got really, really bad, and they're actually starting to recognize when things are going to be more difficult, and they're coming in early. And early intervention's always ideal, right? But yeah, it's hard. So I know a lot of people that like something's hard for them, and I mean just being honest and being like, hey, like, do you think you could use someone to talk to? And I always tell people too. I think people think therapy is, we're gonna come in here and tell you to do all these things.
Fix.
Yeah,
Fix
it's
you.
not a fix at all. Basically, you're the leader, and I'm just kind of guiding you to how to explore this further. And like I believe people have the power to heal themselves, and that people have it within themselves to figure these out. But sometimes they just need someone, like a sounding board, to kind of push it off of. And I consider myself just kind of a guide through that. And I might have some suggestions of things, for example, to help you like relax or soothe yourself. But I'm not going to do a quick cure. I'm not going to dissect you. I'm not going to make you feel like there's more going on. But it's just kind of a way of working through things, and it's like a conversation.
Yeah.
It usually goes pretty naturally. People, I think, get a little worried about that too. It's not like the movies where there's like this doctor writing everything down, and I'm like,
You're lying down on the sofa.
yeah, or lying down on the sofa. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like that at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, we are talking about it more, which I think, like you said, adolescents are reaching out. Like even 10 years ago, people weren't talking about it as much. Like you didn't see, and I guess, that's one good thing of social media, where it's a platform and people raise awareness about different issues. So people are more comfortable talking about it. Like you said, it was more like, you need to be fixed, or you need to just get over it, where not understanding that mental health because you can't see it, versus like if it's a physical illness, like you've broken your arm, we always go and check on people. We feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how is your arm, when does your cast come off? We're okay to talk about those things, versus mental health, and checking in and just kind of being there. And it can be frustrating, when somebody might be going through depression, might not be, you keep trying and you feel like, oh, I'm trying and the person's not bothered. But it's like understanding it, I guess, from that person's lens, where the person is not actually able to
No.
give, right?
I think people need to just keep checking in and just being there, right? It doesn't mean you have to do much. It just might be like, hey, I was thinking of you today.
Yeah.
And just letting, because you're not able to, no one's ever going to be able to push someone to do something they don't want to do, right?
Yeah.
But being there for people is a big piece of that. And depression's one of those things, and again, I think it's got a lot of like misnomers about it in the community. Depressed people don't always like lay in bed all the day and look miserable. Depressed people can go to work and they can do a whole bunch of amazing things while they're holding all that pain in, and then they release it maybe when they're at the end of the day when they're by themselves, right? So we don't always recognize when people are depressed.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard, but I think if you feel someone's not doing well, like just being like, okay, just let me know if you need anything, and like checking in, dropping by once in a while, just still being there and not taking it personally, like, okay, this person's not putting the effort in. But some people, when they're not well, they need that extra effort. Having people care for them and knowing they have support's a big part of that.
Yeah. And I know like anxiety comes up a lot now, and people are comfortable talking about, yes, I have anxiety or I suffer with anxiety. What are some of what would you see somebody with anxiety or having an anxiety attack? What does that look like?
Well, anxiety is a normal feeling that we all have. And we all feel anxious for certain things, and we all have certain fears and certain, so that's very, very normal. There's different things like generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, phobias. I won't really go into all of that. But panic attacks, which are fairly common with people that are already kind of anxious, they can look different ways. Sometimes people are hyperventilating, or sometimes people are breathing really, really slow. They're getting flushed. They're feeling a very fast heartbeat. They're feeling numb. Some people can faint and pass out. So it looks, I think, different with everybody. So that's kind of when I work with people, is figure out what their symptoms are at the time. And so that's how you kind of have a treatment plan to figure out just like how to work that through. But yeah, I think anxiety is very, very common. And I do think it's kind of it's increased because of kind of what happened, that people had all these really good coping strategies and they lost some of them.
Yeah. During the isolation, during COVID. And somebody that's maybe listening that might want to seek help, what would you say for them to take the first step? What would your advice be? Where do they reach out?
Well, there's a lot of counselors nowadays. So there's a really good selection of finding a counselors. Most counselors provide like a 10-minute consult, usually just to talk to them and see if they feel like a match for you. I'm a registered clinical counselor, so bccounsellors.org. If you go there, you can actually type in which area you live in, what you're looking for, someone who specializes in anxiety. And there's different kinds of therapies too. There's somatic-based, so body-focused, cognitive behavioral, which is more what I do. And you can put that in there and it'll give you a whole list of names, and you could just, call them and talk to them. Depending on the city you're living in, there's nonprofits that offer low cost, often with master's students, for counseling. In Surrey, it's Moving Forward Family Services has a lot of counselors and low cost counseling available. So I guess there's a lot of supports, and calling your local mental health center also is a possibility in each city.
And your counseling practice is called?
Caledon Counseling.
And I guess with counseling too, it's finding the right fit of which.
It's a relationship, right? So people always, I've heard people go, I went to this counselor and she was such a jerk, or I couldn't stand them, and I was like, and they kind of give it up, and I was like, well, it's just like any relationship. Like sometimes you're gonna have to try a couple people to see what feels good for you and what feels right. Like if you feel safe with them and kind. I'm a person who uses a lot of humor, and kind of just, that's how I connect with people, and especially at the beginning, because it's a scary thing, right? But yeah, so I strongly urge people to, look around, talk to people, see what they kind of feel they connect with, and give it a bit of a chance, because I still have a lot of people that come in the first section and think I'm going to fix them within one session, and they're like, and I'm not cured, and I was like, well, I wasn't, that wasn't my goal.
Be open and open-minded, and just take the first step, and so that was a lot of good information. Thank you, Robin, for coming in and talking with us. Thank you, everybody, for watching Asian Pulse. Until next time, this is Nina J.
Thank you, Robin. Showman Event Entertainment and Production House is hosting an April Fool's Day special event, which is again a stand-up comedy show in Hindi Punjabi at Guildford Golf Course Hall, located at 7929 152 Street, Surrey. Tickets can be bought on eventbrite.ca or you can call 604-790-9077. One of our friends from Asian Pulse TV is in dire need of kidney donation. So we have 2 kidneys and we can utilize one if we are healthy, wealthy and wise. So consider your option and let us know if you would be able to help our friend. If you're from the Fijian community and you had kidney transplant done in the past, now you want to give back to the community and become an ambassador, then you can get in touch with us at 604-537-5123. If you have missed our shows, you can watch it again on YouTube, and this will be broadcasted again tomorrow at 8:30 and again on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. 3 shows that are broadcasted under Kamila Singh's shows are Fiji in Focus, which you can watch on Tuesday at 10 p.m., Thursday at 2:30 p.m., and Sunday at 4 p.m. Kamila Singh's show every Monday at 10 a.m. and again on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. VT Vibes TV is broadcasted on Thursday at 10 p.m. and again on Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Before I sign off, I want to leave you with these thought-provoking words by Albert Einstein. He says, "Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new." With that, I'm your host, Manvi Randhawa, and I'll see you next week. For any kind of visa-related services, contact Milky Way Immigration, a galaxy of opportunities located at Unit 209-9547 152 Street, Surrey, BC. They have licensed immigration consultants, placement officers, and LMIA experts to meet your immigration and recruitment needs. Book one-time free consultation either on Facebook or by calling 604-396-0005.